Hello everyone, I'm Salad and welcome to a bonus episode where I'm going to be reading through Danganronpa IF. I think it's just Danganronpa IF because at the end of Danganronpa 2 we had a bunch of extras that I could look into and read, and one of them talked about a what if scenario, and it was this novel. For some reason I tried reloading my save of Danganronpa 2 and I couldn't find it again. So I just found it again online, and that's where we are right now. So I'm not going to be reading all of this aloud for you guys. That would take forever. That would be not very interesting to watch. I'm going to do this the same way that I did for Danganronpa 0. I am going to be reading through this and stopping every so often, especially every chapter, but probably more often than that, and giving my thoughts and also summarizing what has happened so far. I know a few people have been waiting for me to read through this. It has actually been a little bit of time since I last played Danganronpa 2. Just to give you guys some context of where I'm at in the story, I just finished the first trial of Danganronpa 3 and already finished Ultra Despair Girls. So if you're watching this in the future and you're confused about what I know and what I don't know, that's where I am. That's where I am right now. So that should get you guys caught up to where my knowledge is at and where my memory is at. So I'm going to start reading this. I'm not going to waste too much more time, and I'll stop in a little bit and let you guys know what's happening. Actually, why don't I read the prologue seems kind of short here. Why don't I read the prologue aloud, and then I'll read the rest of this quietly and give you my thoughts on it. Because I feel like that's the way it starts is probably going to be important. So let's just read the first of this together, actually. I changed my mind. The world you see is full of ifs. Without the if of Eve being joined with Adam, a society as we know it would never have existed. This world in which you live is only one of countless ifs, constantly being propelled forward like a pool of mud by these possibilities. Miso soup no nakade, if you will. I don't know what that means, but so this is the Mono Bear's monologue. So Monokuma is always spouting off nonsense. It sounds like right now, Monokuma is talking about multiple parallel universes and multiple possibilities for the way the universe can go. What follows is an iffy world where ifs and if-ifs, an uncertain Klein bottle, where the surface and the inside are one and the same. Oh, don't break it now. None of you bastards can afford to pay for it. Talking about so the universe is a bottle. I don't know what a Klein bottle is. The surface and the inside are one and the same. Ahem. Anyway, this is a world of ifs. You could speculate and guess and make conjectures all you like, but only the future is a flexible pool of mud. The past is more solid than a 40-degree banana. What? The past can't be changed, and looking into a world that could have been won't save anyone in the real world. I see. So the past is solid, the future is mud. And thinking about what could have been doesn't do anything because the past is already solid and can't be changed, so you should always be looking to the future? Is that the idea? After all, an if is only an if. And even if there was a sickening parallel world where that particular if became real, humans can't cross those lines so easily. In this case, all ifs are divergence ifs. Okay. So again, just saying that what could happen doesn't matter because it's just a could. And that doesn't matter unless it's something that actually happens. You still want to see it? You got some sick hobbies, you know that? Don't you think it's that's like desecrating Naegi-kun and the others' efforts? They're moving forward past that tragedy now, you know? I'd still heap desecration on them, though. If you really want to see this. Then it would be best if you looked at the surface of the Klein bottle first. Maybe start by playing this game called Danganronpa. Way ahead of you on that one, Mono Bear. Through to the end. And try to play multiple times so you get to hang out with Junko and Oshima about 3 times. And if you finish collecting all the items and movie clips, you're just about perfect to go. But I guess the fact that you're already here means you've obviously did all that. I'd still buy it though. I'd still buy 2 copies of Danganronpa. Okay, well I already have played through Danganronpa 2 and Ultra Despair Girls, and have watched many playthroughs of Danganronpa 1, so I think we're all good on that. So that was the Mono Bears monologue. That was the prologue. So I believe that this novel is a what if scenario. It's not, I don't know if it's actually canon, the things that are going to be in this, whether or not they really actually happened, but I'm going to still interpret them as if they are real events, as if they did actually happen, because if I try to just separate this from everything else that I know, that's going to be impossible. So I'm still going to look at this as if it was something that actually happened. And then once I go on to Danganronpa, once I continue on with Danganronpa 3, I'm going to forget this and then consider it not canon. So just for the sake of discussion here, I'm going to assume this is all real. So now I'll continue reading on through this. It looks like we're going to be looking through Makoto Naegi's eyes, which is interesting. We haven't had anything to do with him in a while. I mean, obviously he existed a little bit in Ultra Despair Girls, but not very. He didn't really have a huge role there. It was only in the first game. Well, he also had a role in Danganronpa 2, I guess, as well. But yeah, Makoto is making cameo appearances, but it's pretty rare that we get to see through his eyes again. So this should be nice. Okay, so far, this is indeed from Makoto's perspective, and this seems to be taking place during the events of Danganronpa 1. Makoto is still in Hope's Peak Academy, and he gets the escape switch from the Mono machine, tries to use it, and it electrocutes himself. Now, I don't remember if maybe I read this particular part of it before. This seems kind of familiar. I might have read this when I finished Danganronpa 2 the first time. Read this very initial part of it where he presses a switch and it electrocutes himself. I think I did. But obviously, I definitely did not read all of this because this is 91 pages. This is going to be a long one. But yeah, it sounds kind of familiar to me. But basically, Monokuma played a prank on him. The escape switch was not actually an escape switch, and it just electrocuted him. Okay, so it seems like the object, or the button that Makoto got from the Mono machine did something to him. He opened the door to his... So apparently this all takes place very early on in the events of Danganronpa 1, before Sayaka is even dead. So he opens the door to his room and he finds Sayaka, and then he faints, and then he's woken up in a medical bed with Junko next to him. And he says Junko with a question mark. And he seems to be thinking that he can trust everybody. So what I'm gathering from this is that his memories seem to be coming back. And I think that's what that button did to him. It's causing his memories to come back. So we'll see how this affects things. I think this is the idea behind the novel so far, is that Makoto's memories of everything is going to come back early on, and that's going to affect how things play out in the events of the first game. So I'll continue on, and I'll get back to you guys as things play out. But he's just talking to Junko right now after he woke up. Okay, I just finished the first part, and Makoto's dead. So what happened here is that things are happening a little bit out of order, but they're also happening in the way that they did in the past. So everybody is still alive. Sayaka is not dead, but Monokuma calls everybody to the main hall, and Junko gets all mad at Monokuma for talking about class trials, and she's about to get hit by the spears. Makoto saves her, but gets stabbed himself and dies. So now Makoto's dead, and apparently his memories were coming back, so I guess this is gonna be weird. So I guess the story is going to be following Mukuro Ikusaba pretending to be Junko from now on. That's very interesting because Mukuro is one of the characters that we really don't have a lot of information on. We obviously get a lot about Junko herself in the storyline, but there's always been a lot of questions as to why does Mukuro go along with all this? Sure, she loves her sister maybe, and that's, she just does what she can for her sister, but it's always been kind of confusing as to her motives. And I guess we're going to get more of that in part 2 with just following along Mukuro Ikosaba directly. So that's fascinating. I guess we'll see where this goes. So I'll continue on and keep going from part 2. Okay, I finished up part 2. So apparently Makoto's not dead. It really seemed like he was dead because he got stabbed by one of the spears and was bleeding out on the ground. But apparently Mukuro Ikusaba believes that she can save Makoto. So she wants to bring him somewhere and heal him. However, Monokuma is sowing a bunch of discord between everybody, revealing the fact that Mukuro Ikusaba is not who she says she is, pretending that Monokuma's pretending that he's been or Junko through Monokuma is pretending that they are there to help them. Basically, there's a lot of confusion happening. Mukuro Ikusaba has to fight Sakura Ogami, which is not very easy. Awakens Genocide Jack in order to cause a distraction so that she can escape. It's a bit of an about face, a bit of a kind of a unbelievable turn that Mukuro would suddenly see, like, she really wants to help Makoto and seems to have had a complete change of heart, even though she admits that she is fully a part of the ultimate despair and wanted to cause despair for the entirety of the world. And yet suddenly, just from a few words from Makoto, she's changed her mind, and a few actions from Makoto, she's changed her mind. That seems a bit ridiculous to me. That would go this way. But then again, it is a what if, and this is a scenario that has a very little chance to happen. And so I guess this is one of the alternate universes where the impossible has become possible, and that's where this is all turning out. So I guess that's the way that it is. But regardless, Mukuro managed to escape with Makoto. A bit of a shame that she couldn't just convince everybody to help Makoto survive. A bit unfortunate with that, but regardless, it is what it is, and Mukuro is carrying Makoto somewhere to, I guess, heal him up. And now I finished part 3, and that was a pretty crazy chapter. So it was mostly a conversation between Mukuro Ikusaba and Junko, just bantering back and forth with each other. A lot of it was just nonsense. A lot of it was just Monokuma being Monokuma and Junko being Junko. But there are some important points in here. It seems like Mukuro Ikusaba has always been trying to understand Junko and thinking that she does understand Junko and what Junko wants. But Junko has always said that she is disappointed in Mukuro Ikusaba, disappointed in her sister. And it's hard to know what to make of all of that. But here at the very end, Junko changes her tone. And instead of talking about how Mukuro is a disappointment and how she's always a failure, how she doesn't like her at all, Junko actually changes her tone and tells Mukuro that she loves her, that she just to go do what she wants to do, and says goodbye. And apparently that switch, that character switch, basically means that Junko is cutting out her sister completely and showing that Mukuro never really understood her. That I think the idea is that Junko never wanted Mukuro to be helping her in the first place. Never wanted Mukuro to be trying to assist her with her plans of ultimate despair. I think what Junko actually wants is an antagonist, somebody to work against her. And Mukuro finally understands this and comes to the decision that she is going to do everything she can to destroy Junko's plans, to destroy Junko's dreams of despair, and to destroy all of that. And I think that's really what would make Junko the most happy, and it's also the thing that would make everyone else the most happy. It's just interesting that it's really fascinating that she's come to this conclusion for the sake of her sister. So for the sake of her sister, she's going to work against her sister as much as possible and try to take Junko down as much as possible. And it makes sense because we see that at the end of Danganronpa 1. We see that Junko really enjoys when there's the complete destruction of her dreams. And yeah, this makes a lot of sense. I really like the way that all went down. And it's very consistent with Junko's character, and it's also consistent with Mukuro's character. We did see that, I do recall from Junko's hangouts in Danganronpa 1 that the fake Junko, Mukuro Ikusaba, did seem to have some kinds of feelings for Makoto from the very beginning as well. She would talk about how she would find Makoto a girlfriend when everyone got out of there, and obviously she was, I don't know. I feel like there was always something between them a little bit, so I think it does make some amount of sense. So yeah, she's going to help out Makoto and work to destroy the whole everything that Junko has created. And it's too bad that this is an if. This is just in a what if scenario. This isn't something that's actually happened. If this did actually happen, then I'm sure a whole lot of things would have turned out a lot differently. And they already are turning out a lot differently. So I'm curious to see how this is going to end. If this is going to end better, in a better way than the first game did, or in a worse, or is everything going to come crashing down in the end, and it's going to end up being a more despair-inducing ending? I guess I'll find out. So onwards to part 4. And now we finished part 4. So Kyoko and everybody else enters the infirmary, finds Makoto. Kyoko and Fujisaki stay there, and we find out that Mukuro Ikusaba is hiding in there, just listening to them. And Kyoko and Mukuro get to have a bit of a heart-to-heart talk, I guess. Well, not really a heart-to-heart talk, but they get to explain things to each other. Kyoko is always best girl, so she's willing to listen and hear out whatever Mukuro has to say. And Mukuro just basically explains everything. Says, ultimate despair, this all happened, you're the ultimate detective, blah blah blah, here's the big lore drop. And Fujisaki believes everything, and also adds that Fujisaki also adds that they were the one that created the program for controlling the Monokumas, if I understand this right. Let me reread this pretty quick. Sorry, this is kind of a lot to take in. Yeah, the contents of its control system is what they're referring to here. So Fujisaki, Chihiro, was apparently the one that created the control system for Monokuma, and I don't think we were informed of that during the events of Danganronpa 1. So that's interesting. I don't think you learned that in any of the hangouts with Chihiro, if I recall. One thing I was expecting is that In the events of Danganronpa 1, we do see that Chihiro recognizes Makoto for a brief moment, the first time that Chihiro meets Makoto at the beginning of the game. I was expecting something about that to be mentioned and expanded upon. That seems like something that they would do, but that hasn't come up yet. But that's something that's on my mind that they haven't said anything about yet. And Mukuro says something here as well when asked about what she's planning to do, and her answer is despair. I have to show Junko despair. So yeah, that confirms that that is indeed her goal. Mukuro is just wanting to cause despair for Junko by ruining all of her plans, and obviously that is in this case a good thing. We'll see what that ends up being. I can't imagine it will ever be a bad thing, that wanting to go against Junko, because I don't think Junko would ever have a change of heart and suddenly want to help everybody out, and then Mukuro would end up being the one that's going against everybody. I don't think something like that would ever happen. Junko was too set in who she is for it to ever change. So I think at this point, since that's the case, Junko being who she is, I think Mukuro is just going to continue to be an ally from this point on, just because of that. Even though she's not an ally for the right reasons, maybe, I don't think that her reasons will ever conflict. I don't think the fact that her reason is to cause Junko despair will ever conflict with everybody else finding hope and getting out of here, is what I'm trying to say. I just can't imagine that happening. I mean, Junko will probably try to find a way to trip Mukuro Ikusaba up and make that kind of thing happen, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where everything goes. So now we're on to part 5. So I'll continue on and read that. Okay, I'm not done with the chapter just yet, but I wanted to point something out because something caught my attention. So far, in all of the games, we haven't really gotten a look at the wider world and what it looks like now after the tragedy. And well, I mean, we did in we technically did, I guess, in the very end of Danganronpa 2. We get a view of Makoto and whatever, but it's like just one frame. And then in Ultra Despair Girls, sure, we get a whole game where it's after the events of the greatest, most awful, most tragic event in human history. We get a whole game set in that place, right? But it's all on an island. And it's on an island that was, for the most part, not affected by those events because of other factors, of course. But they weren't affected by a lot of what was going on because of their unique position that they were in. And then Danganronpa 3, I don't know what's going on with it yet, so obviously don't tell me in the comments. I still think that they're like on the moon or they're on Mars or something in a bubble. But the reason I bring all this up is because we never really had any... Our only information about the outside world came from Junko and Monokuma, which is pretty unreliable because they all have they have their own agenda when telling Makoto and everyone else stuff like that, information, just stuff to create despair and to manipulate them. So you can never really take it completely at face value. And they said all sorts of things about the outside world, about how the air outside is polluted and how you'll be dead within a day if you go outside there. And it's really horrible out there. And we never really got to confirm that for ourselves. Makoto did, but we never really saw. Makoto and the others did, but we as a viewer had never really got to see what it was like outside those doors. However, now at least we got a little bit of confirmation here about how the air outside is unhealthy, but it's not immediately lethal, probably. And about how where else did they say that? Yeah, that breathing in that polluted air. So we got information about how the air outside was polluted before, but now we're actually getting real confirmation because this is Monokuma speaking to Mukuro, and Mukuro saying it as well. And they have no reason to be lying to each other about a detail like that. They both know what happened in reality. So this is a small detail, sure, but I feel like it's an important detail to have like completely set in stone and confirmed, because we couldn't take it for granted before. At least I couldn't. I did not take Monokuma's word and Junko's words as a fact before, but now that they are both seem to be in agreement on this, I can take it as fact and move on with that. So yeah, maybe this seems like a completely pointless thing for me to focus in on, but I feel like it's important to nail down the facts about the disaster that are like that are set in stone. And this is one of those facts that are set in stone now, that yes, the disaster did cause all sorts of pollution in the air and stuff like that, and I would guess that's because of widespread bombings or fires or the nukes or something like that. So clearly there was some huge scale conflict, which we already knew, but now it's nice to get things confirmed that, yeah, it completely destroyed the atmosphere as well. Alright, so I'll continue reading on now. So now I've reached the end of part 5. A lot of it was a big battle, basically, between Mukuro Ikusaba and all of the Monokumas. However, Junko played a lot of pretty dirty tricks, and very smart dirty tricks against Mukuro, calling out like sister while she was fighting, or playing Makoto's like voice while she was fighting to try to trip her up, and it actually worked. But fortunately, at the last second, of course, suddenly in comes Mondo Owada on a motorcycle. Don't know where he got that from, but he comes in with a motorcycle to save her. And Sakura Ogami as well. So, and not just them, everybody is there apparently, including Makoto, which is a little bit weird. I don't know why they picked up Makoto and brought him over here when he probably should still be in bed. It doesn't really make any sense to have him weighing them down when they're trying to fight the mastermind, or trying to fight Monokuma. But he's here anyways. Maybe they just didn't want to leave anyone behind to guard him, so they thought it best to bring him along. I guess in that way it makes some sense. But it's still a little bit weird that Makoto is here limping along to the battlefield. But regardless, that's what's going on. Everybody is apparently rallied together to fight Monokuma, and if this was the way that, if everybody did just immediately come together and start fighting the Monokumas at the beginning of Danganronpa 1, there's no telling how it would have turned out, but I feel like the chances would indeed be pretty good, just because of the amount of strength that all of the different characters have, all the different ultimates, Sakura and Genocide Jill and Mondo and Taka, all of them combined, they probably could have just fought off all the Monokumas and defeated Junko by force, which is very unfortunate, obviously, but nobody knew that at the time, and there's no way to know if that really would have turned out that way, if things really would have went that well. But I guess we're finding out now, because this is a what if. So now it's on to part 6. We'll see how everything concludes, because at the very beginning of this, it said that there are major spoilers for Danganronpa 2, but so far I haven't seen anything like that. I've seen Danganronpa 1 spoilers, and a lot of it, but not Danganronpa 2. So I'm curious to where this is going to go, that it would relate to Danganronpa 2 and other games in the series. So I guess I'll see. So I'm gonna keep reading this, and I'll get back to you guys when I'm closer to the end or at the end. Oh, one quick thing. Kenichiro-san, I just noticed. Sakura just referenced Kenichiro. I believe in Ultra Despair Girls we find a in Ultra Despair Girls you find a bunch of people's like name cards or whatever who are being hunted. I believe Kenichiro was one of them. So that's the person that Sakura made who Sakura always wanted to surpass, I believe, or something like that, or was it her father that she wanted to surpass? Regardless, I remember Kenichiro was mentioned in Ultra Despair Goals, and I think somebody else. I think Kenichiro is not mentioned by name in Danganronpa 1, but Ogami does like hint at him in Danganronpa 1 with her hangout quests, if I recall. But that's just interesting. We've never been able to defeat. Okay. Oh right, I remember Ogami said that she has defeated her father. Never mind. So Kenichiro is the one that she was never able to defeat. Yeah, and I think she does. Again, I think she doesn't mention this name specifically in Danganronpa 1, but we see this person in what they look like in Ultra Despair Girls. Okay, we're not at the end of the chapter yet, but I noticed something interesting. So, to let you guys know what's going on, Monokuma has decided that there's going to be a graduation exam suddenly, and he wants everybody to go through a bunch of exploding Monokumas to try to get the button to open the door to escape. And a lot of people are saying, no, I'll do it. But there's one important piece of information here. Let me see if I can find it. Where was it? Right. So when Junko Enoshima fought to bring despair to others, she always made sure that there was a chance that she would instead be inflicted despair upon. She would not be satisfied unless she allowed for the slight risk of her own destruction. So that's really interesting, and the reason that's interesting is because, well, first of all, that was true in the first game. She allowed herself to lose, and then despaired at her loss and enjoyed that. But also, I'm currently playing Danganronpa 3, and like I said, I finished the first trial, and that's as far as I got. But before that, in Danganronpa 3, there is a section that you can repeat if you want to, where you can try to escape the school. And you do it through this platforming challenge, which seems to be completely impossible. I managed to get to what I think is the end of it, but there's a bunch of letters that are made out of explosives that fall down and obliterate you, or if you touch them, they obliterate you. And there doesn't seem to be any way to get around that particular part. Like, the very end seems legitimately impossible. But reading this now, I feel like maybe it is possible. I don't know if the game truly would allow me to successfully beat that minigame and complete the game early, but you never know. And this, I always thought that it was a possibility, but in this paragraph, makes me feel like it's even more of a possibility than I originally suspected, that maybe if I really did try as hard as I could to get a lot of people through that minigame so that I would have enough lives at the very end, maybe I could like time my jumps to somehow iframe the explosions, or maybe there's some way I could do it. I don't know how likely that is. But maybe I'll give it a few more shots in Danganronpa 3. But then again, that's the kind of hope that Junko would want me to have. Junko wants me to hope that I can have some kind of hope that I could complete it. So maybe that's playing into her schemes there. But I just found this interesting, that Junko always makes sure to have a way for herself to lose. So anyways, Mukuro right now is planning on herself being the one that goes through all the explosions to try to get the way to escape. And Monokuma says that if they fail, he's going to wipe everyone's memories and restart everything. So is that going to try to legitimize this in a way where we're going to fail here, and then everything's going to get reset, and then it's going to be the events of Danganronpa 1? I don't know if they're going to do something like that or not, but I feel like that's pretty likely. I'd like it if that wasn't the case. I'd like to keep this Danganronpa IF to be a true what if, and not to connect back into the original storyline. I'd love for everyone to actually escape here. I think that would be more interesting than the usual, we're just going to wipe your memories again, and then the real game will start. Because we already had that with the event of Danganronpa 1, there was the what was it? The after school something. It was whatever that was, where you could like clean the school and you had to construct different Monokumas, like that little mini game. That takes place before the events of Danganronpa 1. So we already have something like that. There's no reason for this story to go in that direction, so I hope it doesn't. I really hope it doesn't. Alright, I found another really interesting bit of information here. So to catch you up on what's happening, Mukuro Ikusaba managed to successfully go through all the Monokumas and get the switch in order to escape. And she did it not by relying only on herself, but she had Sakura Ogami help her by propelling her forward with a kick. And Junko apparently did not expect that, didn't expect Mukuro to accept help from other people or ask for help from other people. But regardless, that's what happened. But Mukuro says something very interesting here. She says, in terms of winning and losing, I think we'd already lost a long time ago. The reason you erased everyone's memories must be because, the way they were before, you didn't think they'd kill one another, even if they fell into despair. They're different from the other people you toyed with like this. You were sure they'd never hurt each other unless you erased their memories, right? So, I mean, this is very true. From the very beginning, Junko had already kind of admitted defeat by having to resort to erasing everyone's memories just to prove that despair was better than hope. Just to prove that the ultimate hope would turn into the ultimate despair, you had to go and resort to erasing their memories. You had to resort to making them not even be who they are. That is, in a way, that is very much an admission of that's already a failure. That's already starting from a place of cheating. She had to cheat in order to even get to the starting line. So it already is a failure in a way. That's very correct. But the thing is, this is followed up by another almost even more interesting line she says, so it's alright, Junko, one day I'm going to bring back everyone's memories and show you their happiness and relationships, I think. I'll show it all to you and make you despair even more. And I'm curious about this line because I'm curious if it would be it. Well, actually no, that doesn't make sense. I was gonna say, what if I was kind of thinking, what if Mukuro Ikusaba was the one in charge of Danganronpa 3's killing game, and Mukuro wanted to show that wanted to bring despair to Junko by showing, like, if you give everyone these memories, then they won't kill they'll still go to the side of hope. And like I don't know, I was thinking something along those lines, right? But that doesn't make any sense because Mukuro Ikusaba is dead. And this is just a what-if scenario here, and Mukuro Ikusaba is not alive in the events of the actual canon storyline, so that would not make any kind of logical sense. So never mind, never mind on that. But it's still very interesting. So I'm getting very close to the end here on page 87 now. And now I've reached the end. Yeah, that's it. So I know this is not like the official translation that was in Danganronpa 2. Again, like I said, I couldn't when I opened the game, I couldn't even though I loaded my original save file, I couldn't find Danganronpa IF again for some reason. But whatever. We went through it and I enjoyed it anyways, and the translation was still good. Don't worry, I was able to understand like what they were talking about when they said genocide or show. It was genocide Jill, obviously. I can understand it. But here at the very end, what ends up happening is, I guess Junko does just let them leave because they won, so she's gonna let them leave, but doesn't go and execute herself, obviously. She didn't make that kind of a promise. And Monokuma, or Junko, says a few interesting things. Says, next time I'll invite you somewhere nice. I found myself an interesting island. I'm assuming that island might be talking about the Danganronpa 2 island. I forget what the island was called. That's very possible. Ikusaba, or Mukuro Ikusaba, decides to pretend to be Junko for quite a while longer. She decides to take on Junko's identity and try to undo the stuff that she's done. And I guess that serves multiple purposes. It serves to protect herself, because I'm sure Junko is going to tell everybody to try to kill Mukuro Ikusaba, but if she looks like Junko, then that might just confuse them. One thing that does confuse me a little bit is this paragraph here about how so Junko does say that they'll come back, they'll be back, and the reason they say that they will probably come back is that the school houses what is needed to bring back everyone's memories. The stuff belonging to Yasuke Matsuda, the ultimate neurologist, who we do learn about in Danganronpa 0. But why do they need to bring back their memories specifically so badly? Is that really that? I mean, it obviously would be best for them to have their memories. Don't get me wrong. It'd be great for them to have their memories. But would it be worth going back to fight Junko for them? I don't really know. I mean, you've already got Makoto knowing having their memories. And you've got Mukuro Ikusaba having all their memories. And you've got Genocide Jill having all their memories. That's already 3 people that have all their memories of what happened. So you have all the information that you need already in order to like continue on and know what to do and move forward with everything. I mean, I guess there's probably some things that the other people would love to remember, but that's more of a want and not really a need. So I don't see a need necessarily for them to go back to the school to try to find a way to restore their missing memories. At least not until everything is completely settled with Junko. So I don't fully understand that part. And then just like at the end of Danganronpa 1, this ends where they open the door to whatever is outside and we don't get to see what's happening. So this is definitely an if. This is definitely a what if. This is definitely not canon of like what actually happened, obviously. However, I do think that, well, since this was included with Danganronpa 2, even though what happened isn't canon, I believe that the information within it is. And that's why I want to take a few things from this and take them with me to the next games, and I will consider the information that I got here as valid for trying to figure out what's going on in the next games. And the kind of information I'm talking about is, well, Mukuro Ikusaba's personality and nature, which doesn't unfortunately matter anymore because she's dead. The state of the outside world, the fact that it was, that the atmosphere is indeed destroyed. The fact that Junko and Oshima already had the island in mind for Danganronpa 2 when the events of Danganronpa 1 were going on. Although that kind of information just adds some context but doesn't really matter. Oh yeah, the information that Chihiro was the person who created the control system for Monokuma, although we don't learn anything about that in Danganronpa 1, so that's a little bit curious. Maybe that isn't actually canon, I don't know. It's hard to really know what we are meant to legitimately take away from this and what we're meant to just see as what if entertainment, fan fiction, and not to take too seriously. But I think there are, like I said, definitely a few things that you can take from this, and I'll try to keep some of this stuff in mind as I continue on with Danganronpa 3, which I still don't know what's going on in it. Still very confused, so I don't know if any of this will help me out with that. I don't think so. I think this is very much a self-contained story. But it was still very interesting to read it and get some more information on Mukuro Ikusaba specifically, because like I said, we never really got any kind of information on her personality. As Junko said, she was an extra unworthy of lines, which is very sad. But now I'm glad that we got this. We got to have some more information on her, see more about her personality. We got, I guess, a little bit of that in Danganronpa 0, but I still couldn't really figure her out. This one really fleshed out Mukuro Ikusaba's character, and I enjoyed that. I'd say that overall, this particular story I found to be a bit more well written than Danganronpa 0. Danganronpa 0 felt a little bit all over the place. This one also had quite a lot of, how do I describe it? Fan service in the way that, not like in like the like ecchi, you know, nudity kind of fan service stuff that you would normally think of when you talk about fan service. No, fan service means like anything that is service to the fans that's meant to just be like, oh, this thing, you know, this thing, right? Like they would always like reference like people. They would always make sure to showcase people's abilities and talents, and they would like repeat lines that were in the actual like Danganronpa 1 game. Like they would make little self-references to Danganronpa 1 and the events of Danganronpa 1, and like say, ooh, here's them using their cool abilities more because you want to see this. Like I felt it was a little bit fan servicey in that way. Hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. Which is not bad, but it's also kind of it also kind of added a bit of filler to the storyline, reading it through, having to get through like, okay, I get it, you know, yeah, we're going through all this stuff that we've already heard before, or we're seeing these characters act in a way that we already know that they act in this way. We don't need it to have it like shown through the storyline. We already understand these characters. We've played through a whole game or two or three with these characters, so we don't necessarily need that stuff repeated back again, and to have their personalities written out in the storyline again. But regardless, that's what we got, and that's all right. It just made going through it a little bit longer. Oh, I forget if I mentioned this already. If I mentioned this already, it's okay. I'm just going senile at the age of 28. But Monokuma does do one interesting thing here, where he reveals the fact that Sayaka was planning on killing somebody, and uses that to try to manipulate her. Junko is always so smart. Junko always just so many things that are just she's so good at manipulating other people, and this was such a smart move of her to try to like peck at Sayaka Maizono. It doesn't end up working, but that was just something that was interesting to me. The fact that and that also brings me to another point, is that I feel like they mentioned multiple times that Junko was born into despair. And I think the despair that Junko was actually born into was, she always says that she is like the ultimate perfect human being or something like that. I feel like her, and she also, like, sorry, I'm really having a hard time forming sentences here, but there's a point where she perfectly predicts, she says she can predict the future, and she perfectly predicts the actions that Mukuro Ikusaba is going to take to try to get the escape switch. She perfectly predicts all that, although not completely. Mukuro ends up getting help from Ogami, like I said, and gets the switch. But other than that little thing going out of her plans, she seems to be incredibly smart, and she does seem to be like the ultimate perfection or whatever, right? And what I'm trying to say is, I feel like that is the source of her despair. And she also talks about how she was bored of the world from the moment she was born. And that's because she is already good at everything. She has nothing to strive for, nothing to try to achieve, because she's already perfect as she is. And that reminds me or who does that remind you of? Somebody who's tried to become, somebody who's the ultimate, like, perfect everything. It reminds you of Izuru Kamakura, right? Izuru Kamakura was meant to be the ultimate hope, and they were ultimate at all sorts of things, and they ended up becoming Hajime Hinata, right? But they ended up becoming the way they were, possibly also because they were just too good at everything, and they had nothing to look forward to. They were bored of the world, and so they became despair. So I just find it interesting that, and I feel like it's very likely that Junko became the way that she is because she is ultimate, because she is good at all the things that she is good at, because she doesn't feel like she has anything to strive for. And so she became the ultimate despair because she's just bored of everything. She understands everything. She's good at everything. She has nothing because she already has everything. That's the way I interpret it, at least. So, yeah, that was very interesting. It was a good read. Again, glad to get information on Mukuro Ikusaba. Glad to get information on a little bit of the state of the outside world and things like that. Fun stuff. So now I'm gonna get back to continuing on with Danganronpa 3. Hope you enjoyed me reading through this, or giving my thoughts every once in a while and reflecting on what's going on in here. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to all of that. If you did, give the video a like and subscribe and leave some comments for me. I'm sure videos like this where I'm going through like Danganronpa 0 and Danganronpa IF, probably not the most popular kinds of like videos, just me like reading stuff like that. So if you did enjoy it and you are here listening to it, be sure to do those things. It definitely helps me out. I think that's all I got to say though. Like I said, I'm gonna go back to Danganronpa 3 and figure out what the heck's gonna happen after that first trial, because that was a crazy one. So yeah, that's all I got to say. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.